Please welcome Stephen Fry. What a treat.
That was a glorious introduction. Thank you.
Stephen, you are coming to tour An Evening with Stephen Fry, and as a master storyteller, both on stage and off, what do you think is the key to a good story?
Well, I suppose we have to remember what is often called our inner child, don't we? There's something deeply primal about it. I've recently been writing books on Greek myths, and it's made me think about the fact that really, when the human family was younger, and we were in the sort of notional cave that we like to think of, with a fire outside to keep the animals away and to keep us warm, we were first able, how long ago, 100,000 years ago, when we had language, to ask questions and to say, you know, why does the sky rumble when it rains? Why do fires come out of mountains sometimes? And we would invent these stories, and the stories would get more complicated. A bit like, I always think it's a bit like gaming. You know, the first stories were like early games on video, you know, the sort of like Pong, just a sort of black and white square moving around, very basic God, you know. But then as the stories got more complicated, the gods got characteristics and they got colour, and then they got form and shape, and now they're 3D and HDR and high res. And that's how our stories developed. And we have this instinct and appetite for them. One of the most surprising things I ever did was when I was asked to read a children's story back in the 90s. There was just this one book, Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone.
Oh, that sounds interesting. I've never heard of it.
Yes, exactly. And no one had. And then to watch this phenomenon. And part of it was, I think, that in the 90s, as the internet was developing and the modern world as we now think of it was growing and growing, the primal beauty of a story, of a thing that makes you lean forward and go, what next, is all the more precious. And I think, you know, children, however much they are exposed to technology and normal and find it normal, that inner fire for a good story just burns as brightly, if not more brightly. That's a very long answer to your question.
No, please. I could sit here and listen to you all night. I got to be honest. But you mentioned our love of asking questions, and there is a question and answer portion of your show. In your time that you've been doing these shows, I mean, I hope you're vetting these questions. But like, what's the craziest or weirdest one that you've ever been asked?
I was on this morning show in Australia, and someone asked me, "What's the craziest story you've ever?" What's the craziest question? Yeah, it was. Well, I mean, you do. It's hard to believe looking at me, and I apologise for. I realise I've come dressed as a violet crumble, but.
I knew I loved you.
I do nonetheless still occasionally get questions about, you know, quite deep, personal, embarrassing things like, would you send me your underwear? And I used to hear about, you know, when I was growing up, like everybody, you'd watch people on the talk shows, Parkinson or whatever it might be, and they would tell stories about the letters they got as famous people, and occasionally they would involve things like, please send me your underwear. And I used to think, well, that's because they're a pop singer or a handsome actor, but it seems even if you look like me, there is someone in the world who wants your underwear. So when I come, I ought to say, because of course I have my publicity people either side of the camera shaking their fists at me, I ought to say that the box office is open at 10 o'clock this morning, Monday morning, in Australia. So when you come, let's assume the underwear question has been asked and find something else to ask if possible.
Very key.
Well, Stephen, it is currently August, which means the Edinburgh Fringe Festival is on right now. And one of the earliest sort of accolades you got was winning a big award at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival for a sketch show you did with Oscar winner Emma Thompson and also Hugh Laurie about 40 years ago. I mean, the Edinburgh Fringe is a famously wild time for performers. When you throw your mind back to those days, Do you remember any debauchery? I mean, did you get into much trouble?
Well, it was it was extraordinary. I was talking about this just recently, and when I was last at Edinburgh, to a nephew of mine who tried to understand how Edinburgh could work when we didn't have mobile phones and how we arranged to meet each other. And of course, the answer was it was pubs. You just stayed in a pub all day and everyone knew you were there. But now, of course, there's no reason to stay in a pub because you can just say, oh, I'm standing at this corner, or send your what 3 words to someone and you can find exactly where they are. Yeah, the most extraordinary thing was we did this show one particular evening, and as Hugh and I and Emma, we were taking our bow, there was this weird noise from the audience, and we couldn't understand what was going on. And then I looked behind me and I realised that Rowan Atkinson had walked on stage. Now, he was well known. We were students, but he was already well known. And he was going, excuse me, and we thought, he's taken over our show, what's going on? And he said, I won't keep trying to do a Rowan impression. Sorry. He has the slightly more shy version of himself. He announced that we had won this award. It was called the Perrier Award then. It's now the Comedy Award.